Buying or selling a house is not necessarily a cheap process to undertake. So we want to give you some ideas about who is responsible for paying what when you have an accepted offer or when you're thinking of listing your house for sale here in Halifax. Depending whether you are a seller or a buyer here in the Halifax market really will depend on exactly what the costs that you, as the seller or the buyer, are actually expected to pay. So let's go over some of those details. Let's start off with a seller. Once you've decided that market is right and you've started seeing other houses that you want to move to and you're looking at your house thinking, do you know what, maybe this is the time to actually put it up for sale. Well, there's going to be some costs involved. Now, the first thing that you're going to do is obviously start figuring out like, okay, who is the realtor of choice that we're going to use? That's when you go through the interview process. And at the moment, nothing's really costing you any money apart from a little bit of your time. Now, as soon as you've decided that you've got the right realtor, there's a variety of different suggestions that realtor might make to you. One of the ones are obviously items in the house that's going to need to be addressed, things that are going to need to be fixed up, because when a realtor comes in, we're looking to maximize your return and sell your house for the highest possible price. It's got to look good. So there will be definitely some items that you as the seller are actually looking to fix up, do some replacements, maybe switch something out, replace it with something, and that's going to take a little bit of time. So once you've got that list, that's the cost on you, like that's your responsibility. One of the other things that you could be looking at as well is, do we need a little bit of assistance? Do we need to get a home stager in? Now, we definitely have a brilliant home stager that we use, and we do home staging consultations with the sellers and Lisa on pretty much every house that we do. Because whether you're going to use that stager's services or whether you're going to do it yourself, getting the ideas from someone who is a professional, who has done hundreds of houses, who is on top of what the actual market is looking for, has a style theme that they're going to do to pull together all of the details in your house, that's definitely something that is really worth it. There have been houses I have walked in and gone, this place is amazing. Like, there is nothing to do. You don't need to stage anything. You just need to maybe kind of tidy up a little bit of stuff. So in that situation, obviously there is no point in having a home staging consultation, but it's one of the things that we like to try and get done, because it's not me giving you the opinion of what to be done, and you've decided that you're selling the house. So it's not your decision either about how you should live in your house. What we're trying to do is portray how somebody else is going to live in your house. So that's why a home staging consultation is really good. They tend to be something like around about $150 to $200 for the time for the stager to come in. So that could be one cost that you're going to look at. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the realtor fees. Realtor fees by far from a selling point of view are going to be the biggest cost. You're looking at 5% plus HST, but that number is negotiable. So always have a conversation with your realtor and ask them, how much commission do you actually charge? And then see if it's negotiable and find out the skills of the realtor. You're testing the realtor a little bit here to make sure that their skill set in terms of negotiation is going to be top notch, so that you know when it comes time to have a negotiation with another agent on the sale of your house, that that agent has got your back. So by far, that is going to be your biggest expense. Now, carrying on with the seller, another expense obviously is the lawyer. The lawyer is going to have to do some work to change title out of the seller's name and into the buyer's name. So let's say that's about $1,000, maybe $1,200, something like that. So that's another expense as a seller. Realistically, that's it. Let's go a little bit further down that hole. If the buyer actually has items on their inspection report and they provide an amendment saying that they want you as the seller to do it, that's going to be some more cost, obviously. So we're just addressing like the costs that we see right now. One of the other costs, especially that people talk about, is the deed transfer tax. There is no deed transfer tax in Halifax when you sell your house. Unfortunately, we saved that for the buyers, so we'll cover the buyers in a second. So that's basically the three major expenses that you could occur. If you go down staging and you want to bring in furniture that you as the seller are not buying, well, if you buy it, it's your expense, but if the stager provides it, that's still your expense as well. Depending on how much you need, depending on the amount of staging that's going on, will depend on the cost. So that can vary anywhere from, I think I've seen it as little as $700, and it can just go up to about $2,000, because it depends on how long you're going to need that furniture for as well. So those really cover off all the seller expenses. Let's get into the buyer side. Now the buyer expenses, right up front, realtors who are working with buyers are actually going to get paid, and they share in the commission that the listing agent has agreed with the sellers. Whatever that number is, it's agreed by the seller and the listing agent. So the buyer's agent is basically just going to get whatever has already been agreed. So are they working for you as buyers? Absolutely, 100%. We've got your back. We are trying to find the right property in the right neighborhood, write an offer that's actually going to get accepted, and everything else that goes with it. But when you get into those details of your agreement, of your purchase and sale agreement, so the realtor is for free. The first thing that's going to happen, which is number two, so number one, cost, realtors are free. Number two, now we're getting into the buyer due diligence, and that can be things like a house inspection. Roughly $600 to $700, maybe even $800, depends on the size of the house. The bigger the house, the more time an inspector is going to take to do that inspection, therefore the more cost it's going to incur. So what do? Go for the smallest house or the smallest condo, it will be the cheapest. However, that sometimes isn't the point of this whole process. So that's the first cost. Now, if you also are looking at having a septic line inspection, also called a municipal sewer lateral line, especially if you're on mains water, then that is an extra cost, and you can have a video scope that will actually go down that sewer line and you can see if there's any problems. If there's problems, typically you would go back to the seller and say, seller fix at seller's expense. But that could be another $300, something like that, as part of your inspection. Let's have a look at, well, if we go onto drilled wells and septic fields. Septic fields, absolutely you need to video scope that. Same thing with water quality. You need to test that water quality to make sure you can drink it out of the well. Third thing, water quantity. So in other words, in the well, have you got enough water for a normal family household needs of 4? Well, guess what we've just done? Buyer's cost, buyer's due diligence, costs have just gone up. $300 to $400 for a septic inspection. Anywhere from about $250 at its cheapest, all the way up to about $1,000 for water quality testing. Now there is ways of doing that in terms of who do you get to test the water, but let's say on average $600, maybe $700 if you're in a drilled well to get your water quality. Then the third one, of course, is the water quantity, the flow test. How much water have we got in that well? And therefore does it supply the needs of a family of 4? That will cost you around about $300 to $400 as well. So you can see the dollars for the buyers are fairly mounting up. Like once you've decided this is your house, you're spending $2,000 to $2,500 if you're on a drilled well and a septic, pretty quick to actually decide if you like it. Another upfront cost for a buyer, of course, is the deposit that goes against the house. Now, the deposit can be anywhere from as little as $1,000 all the way up to, well, as many dollars as you like, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000. And that basically forms part of your mortgage down payment number. So if you're doing a 5% down payment on a $500,000 house, that's $25,000. If you offer up $10,000, that just means on closing day, you've already paid 10, you just need the remaining 15. So it's kind of an upfront cost, but it's cost that you should have in your bank anyway because it's your down payment for your mortgage. So you need that one as well. Now let's get into the third, or maybe the fourth one by now, which of course is deed transfer tax. 1.5% of the purchase price of the house is payable by the buyer on closing date when you buy the property here in Halifax. It's part of the legal statement of adjustment, so the lawyer takes the money and then they just pass it straight on to the government. one of those things that we all have to do. So that is realistically, apart from your down payment, that is going to be your biggest expense. Lawyer, of course, has to come in there as well because they've got some work to do. Similar to the selling side, anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500. There's usually a little bit more work to do on the buyer side. So I would say more like err on the $1,500 in terms of cost. And then, okay, let's track back a bit as well. You could do radon testing. That's another expense that obviously is part of the house inspection that you could do as well. But realistically, that covers off all of the expenses from a buying side and from a selling side. So now you've got a really good idea as to what it's going to cost you, who's got to pay for it in buying or selling a house here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Now, if you have any questions or you want to kind of get some more firm numbers, it really depends on your situation. So by all means, click on the little link down below and let's set up a time to have a conversation. But that's all you need to know about how the costs are set up for buying and selling a house here in Halifax.